So thank you so much, Conrad. Thank you to everyone that's been watching along. I've been following the chat, and it's just been amazing philosophical discussions and people chiming in with different points. It's been a fantastic place. So thank you so much for all your contributions. Somebody said, "Oh, Martin will pick the good questions." Can I just say, all of the questions are great. I'm just going to pick a few questions that people have been talking about that I think follow on naturally from the great discussion that the two of you have been having. So two that I wanted to pick out. Basically about two really interesting themes that are cut across both science and arts. So Prasanna asks, does creativity hamper steel cold science? Does it make us romantics and we start seeing patterns and elegance when there is only randomness and apathy? And there was another question about beauty. So you talked about how the math started to work out, which suggests that the equations are a kind of simple and elegant. How important is beauty and elegance to discovering physical laws and to the scientific community accepting these laws? That was from King Yang. So just on beauty and on creativity in science and art.
You want to go first, Conrad, or you want me to go first?
You go.
Okay, I think they're both great questions, creativity and beauty. I think the answer is both ways. There's no science without creativity. I mean, if you just look back at every step in science, both by big scientists and small scientists, there's a creative jump. It's not just out of the numbers you get a theory, or out of the equations you get something. No, I mean, you need some new idea, so a new way of viewing things. So there's a jump into. Otherwise, you know, we could replace us with algorithm, and so far we're very far from that. Of course, creativity must be checked. And that's the power of science, is kept into check by the constant reference back to observations. But I think the same is true with art. I mean, you have to be creative, but you cannot just do whatever you want. That's not the point. It's that something works, something doesn't work. And as one of the Huxley said in science, a few things are as sad as a wonderful theoretical idea killed by just a measurement that show it's wrong. And even more, this is true by beauty. Some great scientists were inspired by beauty. Of course, beauty is not in nature, it's in the eyes of the beholder. But Dirac found his equation because it was so simple and so beautiful to his eyes that he said, well, yeah, that should be it. And in fact, it was it. It not only described the electron, but it predicted antimatter. Spectacular prediction out of beauty, which does not mean that what looks beautiful to your eyes has to be true. And I think that it's also true, as somebody has pointed out recently, that nowadays some theoretical research is taken away from the right path, from the good path, from the useful path, by just relying too much into what pleases your eyes. We cannot read the mind of God. So what's beautiful to our eye, we are not, you know, we don't know that. We're not perfectly judges of universal beauty. We are just little creatures that have a notion of beauty can be wrong. Take Maxwell equations. When they were written down, it was all ugly. It was a page of equations. Now we see the beauty because we have changed our mind. So the very notion of beauty changes with our understanding. So the answer is complex, both for creativity and beauty. They play a role. I mean, creativity an immense role, and beauty has played some role, but they shouldn't be overplayed either. And I don't know if in arts, the notion of beauty by itself, it obviously play a role, but I don't know if it's can be misleading as well. I don't know. Conrad, what do you think?
I think, I mean, it's such a broad subject. I think the scientific world is vast. I've been to many symposiums and lectures where there have been some quite very, very different scientists from yourself who are sort of a reductionists trying to find the formula of what makes a great piece of art, and scanned every painting since the Renaissance to the 1920s, and is trying to work out some kind of algorithm which will make the perfect painting, which to me sort of fills me with dismay. And whereas I think that because I believe, and actually one of the things that in your book that's been so exciting is the idea that the reason that doesn't work, you can't create the formula for the perfect piece of music and the perfect, is that everyone who looks at that thing will always see something different. And you'll never be able to control that because of the importance of the viewer. There is this sort of death of the author with conceptual art, that if it's a good piece of work, if it's poetic, you lose control of it. And you'll never have control of it again. And it will mean something different to everyone who looks at it. And it's the great leveler, it's the great democratizer of things, in that it doesn't matter if you're the vanguard of the artwork, or you're a security guard looking at the painting. It's just everyone sees something different, and that is what's so exciting about it. The piece that's actually in the photograph was on I made for a show called Neuroaesthetics, and it talked about molecular aesthetics and neuroaesthetics, and I didn't know what neuro and molecular aesthetics were 15 years ago, but I realized that the molecules are beyond the wavelength of light, and so there was no way of representing it. So about 100, 200 years ago, they had this big problem of how we represent things that we'll never see. And actually, the history of molecular aesthetics is peppered with some very creative artists who created very beautiful visions of information. They weren't pretentious. They were beautiful ways to selectively represent information, not all the information, just the information necessary. And so I think there's a huge need for creativity within science. The thing that was even more exciting to me was when I went to the neuroaesthetics element of it, I was expecting the same amount of visualizations and amazing diagrams and things, but actually, because it was such a new frontier, there was a real dearth of information. And it made me realize that there was a real need for artists to engage within this realm to try and represent these reams of information that was coming out of these new ways of scanning the brain. And there was this revolution happening, but no ways to represent the information. And there's such a need to, particularly when when sort of these things will never be seen by a microscope. The imagination is key to being able to represent these things to us as visual and linguistic people.
So I don't know if we've got about 10 minutes left. So I'm going to try and summarize a few more questions from the audience, just to get you chatting. I have to say, there's been lots of kind of quite philosophical questions. So if I started talking about consciousness and things like that, I think we'd be here for like another 2 hours. So I'm just going to leave you with a few of the more scientific questions that have come in, Carlo, that I think our audience will be appreciative of you looking at. Firstly, I'm also saying this because we've got an event about it coming up in May, but what do you think about the latest shadow, as it was called, the possibility, but only of sigma-3, of a potentially new force of nature found at the LHCb experiment in CERN? And does that start to eat away at the standard model and be that kind of revolutionary step? And that's what Garth was asking as well. He says, how would you question quantum theory, in what ways? And a bit later on, someone also said, Carlo, would it be fair to say that the relational perspective is a modern version of the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum theory, elements of reality in that sense being meaningless in and of themselves unless they're related to each other? I just wondered if you could comment on both of those.
Could you repeat the last point?
So the last point was basically saying that the relational perspective is kind of a modern version of the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum theory. So is this kind of like a new way of interpreting quantum theory?
Yeah, I'm going to answer rapidly, given that there's a little time. So there are three different questions. The first is about this new information from CERN. I don't know. I think nobody knows. What can I say is that I'm in my 60s, and I've been heard possible new information come out from CERN all through my life. So far, it has always disappeared. So this might disappear as well, like many other. Perhaps we're seeing something else, something new. If it doesn't, great, fantastic. We have some new information. We'll think about that. But I wouldn't be excited before. We'll hope to see something new. Let's see. Second question was about questioning quantum mechanics. There are a lot of experiments going on now in the lab that try to look for phenomena that contradict quantum mechanics. They're very precise possibilities, that are being explored. There are theories that say that quantum mechanics goes wrong in this way and that way, that are being tested. And I do put it this way: as scientists of post 20th century, we expect all these theories to go wrong at some point. So it will go wrong. The big surprise about quantum theory is that it's 100-year that it goes right and right and right and right and right. And the big surprise is always, big titles on the newspapers. A new incredible effect predicted by quantum mechanics is actually what we expected, what is written in the books. Okay, people have got Nobel Prizes for new effect of quantum mechanics, which is what I studied in my books when I was a kid. Okay, it's quantum mechanics. So far, quantum mechanics has surprised us by being right, not by being wrong. And the standard model also is surprising us being right and not being wrong. The last question was about the relational interpretation of quantum mechanics. Yeah, there are other interpretations which are equally challenging. I don't think there's an interpretation of quantum mechanics that's not conceptually challenging. In my book, I compare them, I describe them. They might also be seen different aspect of the same thing, right? The elephant touched by different people look different, but it's the same thing. You mentioned it can be seen as a version of Copenhagen. Yeah, it can be seen as a democratic version of Copenhagen. In Copenhagen, you have a classical world, an observer, which is a special system that measure. Relation quantum mechanics is, yeah, that's right, but every single physical system can play the role of Copenhagen observer. And it's what physics describe is how the systems observe one another. Systems doesn't mean the mind, it means just physical object, how they affect one another.
So just one final question I think I'll put to both of you. Rod Nathan asks, should we start our children's, it's a slightly tongue-in-cheek question, but I quite like it. He says, should we start our children's education in physics with Einstein, Bohr and Heisenberg as their imaginations are open before we then move on to Euclid and Newton? And I wonder if there's an analogous thing in the art world where should we start our children's art education with Jackson Pollock and Picasso before their minds get closed down into more kind of traditional art forms? I don't know, Carlo, do you want to answer that first?
We should definitely start our children with Pollock. Which children would love Pollock? He can redo it.
It's unavoidable. It's unavoidable not to start with Pollock because they just throw painting on it.
Yeah,
that is the starting point.
Yeah, I mean that's fantastic art that children can get. I think we should teach children that our understanding of nature is open. In that sense, I mean, we shouldn't teach children. I mean, you don't teach music by starting with a Beethoven quartet, of course. I mean, because it's just ugly if you don't enter into Beethoven first. So you don't start by writing the equation of quantum mechanics, of course, but by giving the idea that we shouldn't tell children, look, we'll figure out the world, this is the world. No, we should teach children, we know something about the world, and look, there's plenty of things we don't know, there's magic, there's something new, which we've been learning all the time.
I'm worried. I have a 6-year-old, and I'm worried that he'll somehow use this to not brush his teeth. That's the problem, I think.
That's a risk, but it's a risk worth.
I'm not sure I'm going to do a multiple universe. Yeah, I think he's going to use it against me somehow.
It's going to use something against you anyway, and that's good at some point.
No, that sounds quite cynical, but I'm sure he'll outsmart me with his many worlds way of avoiding brushing his teeth and having more chocolate.